According to Gurdjieff's teachings, being Christian has nothing to do with cultural identity, church attendance, or professed beliefs. When Gurdjieff established his institute at Fontainebleau in 1922, visitors encountered an aphorism displayed prominently. It said, "Here there are neither Russians nor English, Jews nor Christians, but only those who pursue one aim, to be able to be." Yet, when asked about the Institute's purpose, Gurdjieff stated with characteristic directness, as recorded in the book Views from the Real World, "The Institute can help one to be able to be a Christian. Simple. That is all." The apparent contradiction reveals the teaching's core. Christianity is not a label one applies to oneself. It represents a state of being so rare that most people who claim the title have never experienced even a glimpse of what it actually means. The work of becoming a Christian requires transforming one's entire nature, not adopting a new set of beliefs. In this episode, we'll be looking at Christianity from Gurdjieff's perspective. So if you find this video thoughtful, make sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more wisdom. Also, don't forget to share your thoughts. We love reading those thoughtful comments. Gurdjieff presented his students with an observation that cuts through centuries of religious sentiment. First of all, it is necessary to understand that a Christian is not a man who calls himself a Christian or whom others call a Christian. A Christian lives in accordance with Christ's precepts. In order to be Christians, we must be able to do. Right now, we cannot do. Instead, with us, everything happens. This teaching strikes at something fundamental about human psychology that religious institutions prefer to ignore. Observe yourself for even a single day. Christ teaches to love your enemies, but how can anyone love their enemies when they cannot even love their friends consistently? Sometimes affection flows naturally toward someone close. Other times, irritation dominates for reasons that cannot be explained. The feeling changes automatically according to circumstances beyond conscious control. Sometimes it loves, and sometimes it does not love, Gurdjieff observed in the book. The pronoun it is crucial here. People imagine that they love or hate, that they choose their emotional responses. The reality is that feelings happen through people according to mechanical laws they don't understand and cannot control. The I that claims ownership of these feelings is itself an illusion. It is simply a voice that takes credit for automatic processes. The same mechanical nature operates in every domain. Someone decides to become a Christian, to follow Christ's teaching, to transform their life. The decision feels genuine, accompanied by strong emotion and sincere intention. Yet within days, sometimes hours, attention has shifted elsewhere. Gurdjieff illustrated this with an example so mundane, it's devastating. He said, "The same thing cannot be desired for long, because suddenly, instead of desiring to be a Christian, a man remembers a very good but very expensive carpet that he has seen in a shop. The desire to be Christian is replaced by the desire for a carpet. Neither desire originates from genuine will. Both arise mechanically according to which association happens to be triggered at any given moment. People consist of hundreds or thousands of different I, each speaking for brief periods, each claiming to be the real person, none possessing any actual power to maintain continuity or execute sustained intention. This multiplicity makes genuine Christianity impossible for mechanical humans. Christ's teaching requires sustained consciousness, unified will, and the capacity to maintain intention across time and circumstance. The person who is one way today and another way tomorrow, who cannot predict their own reactions or maintain consistent behavior, simply does not possess the internal unity needed to practice what Christ taught. According to Gurdjieff's teaching in the book In Search of the Miraculous, What passes for Christianity in the modern world exists in three distinct forms. All of them are external imitations that miss the essential point. Christianity number one is paganism in the guise of Christianity, focused on rituals, physical practices, and external observances that require no understanding. It's the Christianity of those who attend church automatically, repeat ceremonies mechanically, and confuse participation in religious customs with actual spiritual development. Christianity number two is emotional religion, sometimes very pure but without force, sometimes full of bloodshed and horror, leading to the Inquisition, to religious wars. This type operates through powerful feelings that can inspire great devotion or terrible violence. But feelings alone, without understanding, produce nothing lasting. The person swept away by religious emotion today may be equally swept away by completely different emotions tomorrow, with no consistency except the intensity of their automatic reactions. Christianity number three appears in various forms of Protestantism and intellectual approaches to religion. It's based upon dialectic, argument, theories, and so forth. This type substitutes thinking about religion for actually practicing transformation. People develop elaborate theologies, engage in biblical analysis, debate fine points of doctrine, all while remaining completely mechanical in their actual behavior. Knowledge accumulated in the mind produces no change in being. Then there exists Christianity number four, in which the mentioned three have no conception whatever. This represents true Christianity, what Gurdjieff sometimes called esoteric Christianity. It's the teaching that Christ actually transmitted to his closest students, hidden beneath the surface of parables and symbolic stories, dealing with practical methods for transforming consciousness rather than moral. When Jesus told his disciples that the knowledge of the secrets of the kingdom of heaven has been given to you but not to them, he was acknowledging this distinction between esoteric and exoteric teaching. The masses received moral instruction and inspiring stories. The inner circle received technical knowledge about human psychology and methods for working with consciousness. Gurdjieff's understanding, based on his claim to have discovered preserved fragments of ancient esoteric schools, was that Christ's original teaching was practical rather than moralistic. According to discussions documented in his books, the parables and statements attributed to Christ contain coded instructions about specific psychological work, hidden in symbolic language that can only be understood by those who have been prepared through proper training. Love your neighbor as yourself isn't a moral commandment impossible to follow. It's a technical description of a state of consciousness where identification with false personality has dissolved sufficiently that one recognizes the same essential consciousness in others that exists in oneself. This state cannot be commanded or willed into existence through moral effort. It emerges naturally when inner obstacles are removed through specific work. Similarly, Christ's statement, "The kingdom of heaven is within you," doesn't point to some vague spiritual dimension. According to Gurdjieff's teaching, it describes the possibility of developing higher states of consciousness that exist as potential within every human organism, but remain dormant in ordinary mechanical life. These states must be accessed through methods that were once transmitted in esoteric schools but have been lost or distorted over centuries. The teaching about turning the other cheek, loving one's enemies, and giving to those who ask, all of these instructions become comprehensible when understood as methods for working against mechanical reactions rather than as impossible moral ideals. The person who habitually reacts with anger when insulted is enslaved by automatic patterns. Learning to observe the reaction without identifying with it, to allow the insult to pass through awareness without triggering a mechanical response represents genuine freedom. This kind of non-reaction cannot be achieved through willpower or moral determination. It requires developing a quality of attention that most people never access. Gurdjieff emphasized that his institute aimed specifically at helping people develop the capacity to be Christian. This wasn't religious indoctrination. It was training in specific methods for transforming consciousness, methods that created the internal conditions necessary for living according to principles that Christ taught. The work required is neither comfortable nor quick. It demands what Gurdjieff called conscious labor and intentional suffering. Conscious labor means applying sustained attention to tasks that would normally be performed mechanically, maintaining awareness during activities that usually proceed automatically. Intentional suffering involves voluntarily placing oneself in situations that produce discomfort, using the friction generated by going against mechanical habits to develop something new. This isn't masochistic self-torture. It's recognition that transformation requires energy, and energy becomes available when automatic patterns are interrupted. The person who always seeks comfort, who arranges life to minimize difficulty, never accumulates the materials needed for building anything permanent within themselves. The ordinary person who lives and dies mechanically simply ceases to exist when the body stops functioning. Nothing remains because nothing was ever created beyond temporary reactions to stimuli. Real Christianity, in this understanding, means engaging in the work necessary to crystallize something permanent, to develop consciousness that can survive physical death. This connects to Gurdjieff's larger cosmology presented in Beelzebub's Tales, where conscious beings serve specific purposes in the universal economy that mechanical beings cannot fulfill. One aspect of Gurdjieff's teaching that has been insufficiently emphasized connects directly to his understanding of Christianity: the nature of real love. As documented in accounts from students and in views from the real world, Gurdjieff stated, "Real love is the basis of all, the foundations, the source. The religions have perverted and deformed love. It was by love that Jesus performed miracles. All accumulated vibrations create a current. This current brings the force of love. Real love is a cosmic force that goes through us. This isn't sentimental or emotional love." Gurdjieff's teaching presents love as an objective force operating throughout the universe, similar to gravity or electromagnetism, but finer and more powerful. Christ's miracles, according to this understanding, resulted from his capacity to channel and direct this force consciously, not from divine status or supernatural intervention. The person who develops real love, who learns to access and work with this cosmic force, gains capacities that appear miraculous from the perspective of mechanical humanity. Yet these capacities follow natural laws, available to anyone willing to undertake the difficult work of transformation. The teaching is simultaneously more hopeful and more demanding than traditional Christian doctrine. Salvation isn't guaranteed through faith or grace, but genuine transformation is actually possible through sustained effort. What makes someone a true Christian, according to Gurdjieff's teaching documented across his works, is not acceptance of theological propositions or membership in religious communities. It's the internal state achieved through years of conscious work on oneself. This work has several distinct characteristics that distinguish it from what most people imagine spiritual practice involves. First, it requires objective self-observation without judgment or justification. The person must learn to see themselves as they actually are rather than as they imagine themselves to be. This seeing is extraordinarily difficult because a false personality has constructed elaborate defenses against recognizing its own mechanical nature. People prefer comfortable illusions about being conscious, unified, and in control to the uncomfortable reality that they're mostly asleep, fragmented, and reacting automatically. Second, the work demands struggle against identification. Identification means losing oneself completely in whatever currently captures attention. It could be emotions, thoughts, sensory experiences, roles, or activities. The identified person becomes their anger, their fear, their thoughts, their job, and their relationships. They have no separation from mechanical processes, no awareness beyond whatever is happening at the moment. Learning to maintain awareness while experiencing emotions, to observe thoughts without believing every thought represents truth, to participate in activities while remaining conscious of oneself as the one participating, this represents genuine spiritual development according to Gurdjieff's teaching. It's not dramatic or emotionally satisfying. It's patient, repetitive, and often boring work that produces incremental changes over years rather than sudden enlightenment. Third, transformation requires working on all three centers that Gurdjieff identified: intellectual, emotional, and moving instinctive. Most religious paths focus primarily on one center, producing unbalanced development. True Christianity requires harmonious development where thinking, feeling, and physical being all evolve together, each supporting and balancing the others. Gurdjieff's perspective on Christianity challenges modern assumptions from multiple directions. For believers, it suggests that what they call faith is often merely mechanical belief requiring no effort and producing no transformation. For skeptics, it presents Christianity as practical psychology rather than supernatural claims, making it potentially accessible to those who reject traditional religious frameworks. The teaching documented in the book In Search of the Miraculous and throughout Gurdjieff's work suggests that Christ was not promoting a new religion to be believed, but transmitting technical knowledge about human development to be practiced. The distortions that occurred over 2 millennia transformed esoteric methods into exoteric moral teachings, symbols into literal events, and practical instructions into metaphysical doctrines. According to this understanding, the person who struggles against their mechanical nature, who works to develop genuine consciousness, who learns to act from real will rather than automatic reaction, moves closer to Christianity than someone who simply identifies with Christian cultural heritage. Religious affiliation means nothing. Internal development means everything. This explains Gurdjieff's seemingly paradoxical statements about Christianity. On one hand, he insisted that his teaching was esoteric Christianity, the core of what Christ actually taught. On the other hand, he acknowledged that most people calling themselves Christian have no understanding of real Christianity. Both statements are true from different perspectives. The teaching is Christian in its essence, yet almost no one who claims the title possesses what the title actually signifies. The question, who is a true Christian, cannot be answered by examining external markers like church membership, doctrinal beliefs, or cultural identification. It requires looking at someone's actual state of being, their level of consciousness. By this measure, according to Gurdjieff's teaching documented across his works, true Christians are extraordinarily rare regardless of what people call themselves. Stop calling yourself anything. Stop believing you already understand. This work, according to Gurdjieff's teaching, represents the only path toward becoming what Christ actually wanted you to be.